a defensive game of dodging his opponent's drive while he's trying to protect his ball. Tien keeps running away with the ball, with his opponent right behind him, hell-bent on eliminating just him. As his opponent closes the gap between them, he tells Tien he's finished and tries to knock the ball out of his hands. As he hits the ball in Tien's hands, the ball doesn't even move because of how tightly Tien is holding it. The guy is surprised that the ball didn't move an inch, and Oscar is also surprised and slightly frustrated. Omari just lights up, amazed by how strong a grip Tien has, while Tien's opponent is still in shock by the fact that the ball didn't leave Tien's hands. He quickly spins behind him and knocks out his ball from his hands. Omari watches closely and thinks to himself that it seems that people who make it to the overtime elite are people with extraordinary skills like Tien. He happily grins and tells him that this is getting him pumped up. Nearby, Oscar lets out an angry sigh and asks Omari what the heck he's smiling about. Suddenly, Oscar goes behind Tien while he's not looking. Tien suddenly realizes the towering presence behind him and tries to quickly react. As he turns around, he shouts out in horror when he realizes Oscar is already behind him. Oscar quickly kicks Tien's leg while he's moving and makes him trip. As Tien crashes to the ground, Oscar laughs at him and tells him he's trash. The big guy glares at him and asks him if he really thought he stood a chance in a place like the overtime elite. When Tien gets back up, he watches in horror as his ball dematerializes and he realizes he's eliminated. Oscar tells Tien that a shrimp like him can never amount to anything, so he tells him to forget about the pro leagues. Omari stands nearby and watches Tien crash to the ground. Meanwhile, Oscar tells Tien that this is where his dreams die. The whole thing annoys Omari, and he tells Oscar that tripping Tien is a foul and asks him if he doesn't have any shame. The big guy grins widely and tells him he has no shame because nothing brings him more excitement than crushing worthless dreamers, as he points to Tien, who just kneels on the court. As Oscar and the rest of his teammates ambush Omari, Dribble comes to tell Tien that he's eliminated. Dribble joyfully reminds him that he knows the rules and tells him goodbye. Dribble asks him to make his way out of the boundary line, and Tien sorrowfully does just that. Omari watches Tien walk past the boundary line along to join the other folks who have been eliminated, and he starts to feel sympathetic for his friend. Nearby, Oscar asks Omari if he's going to cry as he reaches for his ball. He tells him it's better he joins Tien, referring to him as a loser, and tries to knock the ball right out of Omari's hand while he isn't looking. As his hands almost hit Omari's hands, Omari does his quick move of bouncing the ball behind his back to his other hand as he moves backward. His move surprises Oscar, who was pretty sure his hands should have collided with Omari's ball. He watches in annoyance and asks him what just happened. Omari immediately tries to hit Oscar's hand, but he quickly bounces the ball to the next hand as he retreats. When Oscar moves backward, his teammates notice how close the attack was, and they ask him if Omari got his ball. Oscar considers how quickly Omari managed to dodge his attack and counterattack, so he decides to watch him from afar, just to be safe. He thinks to himself that this brat's ball handle is not a joke at all. Meanwhile, Omari bounces the ball to and fro behind him and even under his legs. Omari makes his way to another side of the court, and he realizes that players are getting eliminated left and right. He looks at the scoreboard and notices that 3 guys named Devin, Ken, and Ray are topping the board. Omari realizes that even if he manages to survive until the 10-minute timer runs out without being eliminated, it doesn't mean anything if he doesn't get enough points to rank among the top 18 players. He decides that he has to quickly defeat the players near him so he can make it to the next round. He runs into one guy who tries to knock out his ball, and when he does, he moves his ball behind him as usual and kicks the guy's ball away. Luckily, the game allows you to use any part of your body to knock out balls. The guy is shocked by Omari's move since he didn't expect him to use his legs. He starts to sweat when he's hit by the morbid realization that he's been eliminated. Dribble soon comes around and tells the guy that he's eliminated. The guy tries to complain that Omari used his foot, but Dribble doesn't listen to his arguments. Meanwhile, Omari dashes across the court to continue scoring points. Oscar hisses at Omari and mentions that he's starting to get on his nerves, even calling him a bug. He tells his boys to ambush Omari and not to let him get away because he won't let the bastard get to the next round. Omari looks behind him and sees Oscar's boys hot on his heels. He tells them that they may all be better at shooting and at other aspects of the game. But when it comes to navigating the court and dribbling, Omari confesses that that's his realm. In the twinkle of an eye, Omari makes his way across the court in a sprint, dashing between several guys and knocking their balls out of their hands, while smiling like a maniac, of course. Oscar is shocked to see how fast he's moving and scoring points, since he's never seen anyone move like that on a court. He wonders how he's moving that fast. Meanwhile, Omari keeps sprinting across the court, knocking the ball out of the hands of whoever stands in his way. The superfans who are watching the game are surprised to realize that Omari is moving at a full sprint. They ask themselves how he manages to dodge and control the ball at such a speed. Inside the facility, Gray just smirks at the gameplay because he had expected this to happen. He thinks to himself that the other trials challenged Omari's weakness. He recalls how well Omari was able to dodge and dribble him during their game. He mentions that it's time for them to finally witness a stage where he knew Omari would shine. Omari continues on his journey to become one of the top 18 players. He tells himself that he gave up life-changing money for this opportunity, so there's no way he's going to let it go easily. Still running through the court, he tells himself that the sacrifice that he made, as well as his dream, cannot die here. He continues to run past several guys on the field, and he seems to knock the ball out of the hands of about 5 guys in just a few seconds. Suddenly, our guy almost goes past the boundary lines and has to stop himself from going over with a loud screech. Over the line, several thirsty players reach towards him just to get a chance to knock the ball out of his hands so they can get back into the game. They all jump over each other, just to get a chance to touch him. Omari realizes that he has gotten so many points from knocking down balls, and he can't let them steal his ball from him. If they steal his ball, he'll get eliminated, and he'd have to switch points with whoever gets his ball. He cautions himself that he can't get too close to the boundary line. Omari checks the countdown timer and realizes the time has almost run out, so all he has to do is just hold out for a few more moments and he'll make it to the next round. While he stands close to the boundary line that holds back the bloodthirsty players, Oscar corners him from behind and jokes that there's nowhere for him to run to. Oscar, who is now panting because he had been chasing him all along, commends his agility. Behind him are 2 members of his team who have also been chasing Omari. Omari just stands there between the devil and the big red line. Oscar tells him that basketball is a team sport, and he doesn't have a chance of survival all on his own. Omari smirks at him and asks if that's really so since he's higher up on the leaderboard even though he's a one-man team. His statement stings Oscar, who growls at him and looks for a way to eliminate him. Oscar soon runs out of patience, just like Omari wanted, and moves toward Omari himself. He tells him he'll destroy him by himself this time, and he won't send his boys. Omari just smirks at him and tells him he's been waiting for that. Our guy jokes that Oscar finally has the guts to take him on and starts to sprint towards the big guy, who is surprised to see him coming with full force. Oscar becomes alerted, wondering why Omari would decide to charge at him at full speed. He reasons that at this speed, they'll crash into each other and both lose their balls. Omari doesn't seem to care, and continues to charge toward him. Before Omari reaches him, Oscar decides it's not worth it, and suddenly spins away from him and goes behind. Our guy just looks back at him and asks him where he thinks he's going. He quickly turns around and rushes toward Oscar one more time. Omari moves towards him at breakneck speed, which gets Oscar worried because he can't figure out why he's still coming after him. Afraid that they'll crash into one another, Oscar decides that he has to create some space, so he moves a bit backward, but he doesn't realize he's just an inch away from the red line. Behind him, Tien shows up behind him and grabs the opportunity to knock the ball out of Oscar's hands while he isn't watching. In a split second, Tien knocks the ball out of the hands of a surprised Oscar, and he doesn't know what hit him. He falls to the ground as his ball starts to dematerialize, and he realizes that his own dream of getting to the pro leagues is gone with the ball. A stark realization hits him, and tears start to fill his eyes as he asks what just happened to him. 1 minute he was avoiding Omari, the next his dream is being crushed. Dribble pops up and excitedly tells Tien and Oscar to switch places and points. Tien comes back into the court with an evil look on his face, while Oscar just lies on the ground. It looks like it isn't his dream that's being crushed today. From behind him, Oscar hears Omari tell him he's right about what he said. Omari moves forward and stands in front of Tien. He tells Oscar that he was right to say that it's easier to win with a team. It turns out Tien is his own team. Seconds later, the system declares that the game is over after the 10-minute timer runs out. As the system displays that the game is over, Tien celebrates that he was able to make it into the next round, while Oscar still remains on the ground. Oscar starts to curse when he realizes he lost. The worst part is that he lost to these 2 short boys whose dreams he had sworn to crush just minutes ago. Meanwhile, Omari carries Tien on his back as they both celebrate making it into the top 18 contestants. Oscar realizes that the clear path to his dream of becoming a world-renowned basketball player has been crushed in just a matter of minutes. He clenches his teeth in anger and calls Omari and Tien bastards. He screams at them and asks them if they think what just happened means anything. Omari is surprised to hear his voice, so he turns back to see him. Oscar, who is now angrily crying his eyes out, tells them that he doesn't need overtime elite to achieve his dream. He promises to climb up to the pro leagues all on his own while still having tears rain down his eyes. He also tells them that when he does climb up to the pro leagues, they better be waiting for him. Oscar starts to say the things he'll do to them if he ever finds them again, and Tien becomes tired of hearing him blab all day. He threatens that he'll slaughter them the next time they meet. Soon after, all the losers walk away dejected with tears in their eyes, realizing they won't go farther than their local basketball teams. Oscar notices Omari's eyes fixed on Oscar, so he tells him not to take Oscar's words seriously, but Omari doesn't answer him at all. Omari, who is dripping with sweat, grabs his chest when his heart starts to beat a little too fast. He realizes his heart is pounding like crazy and grabs his chest. Hopefully he doesn't have a heart attack. His heart continues to beat, and he grips his chest much longer to try to stabilize himself. Omari thinks to himself that he eliminated Oscar without even thinking. He realizes that in only 10 minutes, they've managed to crush the dreams of hundreds of people. He watches the losers walk out of the arena, weeping because they've lost their shot at ever becoming who they've been dreaming of becoming ever since they were little kids. Omari starts to wonder why he's feeling like he is and why he is suddenly trembling. He realizes that amidst the hundreds who came to compete, he gets to move forward. He realizes that he's feeling this way because he can lose his lifelong dreams at any moment since this competition is so high risk. He realizes the feeling is the feeling of being on the edge of life and death. Omari decides that he's feeling this way because he knows he gets to keep playing basketball up until the professional leagues. A smirk suddenly develops on his face, and he exclaims about how much of a rush he's getting from feeling this way. This guy's crazy. When they get back into the locker room, Omari goes to have some water, and Tien excitedly tells Omari he can't believe he managed to pull that off because he had pretty much given up after Oscar eliminated him. He continues to talk about how Omari tossed him an incredible opportunity and exclaims excitedly. He continues by saying Omari made it happen. While he's talking, Omari stops drinking his water, so Tien stops talking because he thinks he's talking too much. He apologizes by saying he sometimes blabbers when he's talking about basketball. Omari tells him it's not a problem, and tells him to keep going because he had stopped to hand him the water bottle. Omari smiles at him and tells him he likes it when he has teammates who talk, so he hands him the water bottle since he must be dehydrated. Tien just slightly blushes and grabs the water bottle. He then proceeds to thank Omari again for all he's done for him. He explains that he's always been at a disadvantage because of his height. Tien recounts that Oscar would always tell him that he didn't stand a chance to get scouted as a center because of his height. Looking dejected, he explains that he gets it because the average height of a pro player is half a foot taller. He angrily squeezes the water bottle and boldly declares that he loves basketball regardless. He mentions that he doesn't care if it'll always be an uphill battle, and he has to spend the rest of his life battling giants on the court. He concludes by saying that he already knows that this is what he wants to do with his life. With a spark in his eyes, he says this is the reason that he wants to show everyone that even though he's small, he can play basketball at a high level. When Tien asks Omari what he thinks, he's surprised by the question and asks him why his point of view matters. Omari eventually tells him that he thinks it'll be really cool if he still manages to win even if he's shorter than everyone else. Omari mentions that that'd be pretty cool, and his words encourage Tien. Tien excitedly agrees and wildly squeezes the water into his mouth. Omari tells him not to let it get into his head though. He starts to talk to him about what Dribble said their next game will be like, and Tien mentions that Dribble had said it'll be a 3 versus 3 match, which means a team of 3 will play against another team of 3. Our guy smiles in excitement about how awesome this will be, and mentions that this will be the first time he'll be playing with an official team. While they talk, they realize that they don't know how they're going to find their third teammate. They look around and notice that everyone except them seems to have paired up in groups of 3, which means they have to do something soon. Tien becomes worried that they're going to have to play against the others as 2 players, and Omari sarcastically tells him he doubts that. There are 18 of them, and that's not possible if he does the math. In the secret room where the scouts are, Gray enjoys a cup of red wine as they all watch the game. He seems to be quite happy that his contestant has gotten this far. Some of the other guys nearby ask him if Omari is the kid he's got his money on, and he proudly agrees, still sipping his wine. He proudly tells them that they all witnessed his dribbling instincts and his adaptability. He continues by saying he's not sure there's anyone at these tryouts that he can't pass. One other scout sitting nearby agrees, but asks him if Omari can score. The man tells him that to win in basketball, you have to score more than your enemy. He insists that scoring is all that matters. The man explains that this is the very reason he believes that his candidate is more interesting than Gray's Omari. He explains that his candidate may not have been flashy in the dribbling contest, but when it came to shooting, he was the only player from both the West and the East Coast who shot 100% from the field. Meanwhile, the man's contestant walks into the locker room, and everyone turns around to look at him, even Omari and Tien. The man continues by describing his contestant as a sharp-shooting god. The gray-haired boy walks into the boys' locker room with a defiant look in his eyes. The man mentions that his name is Jaden Brooks. When Jaden steps into the locker room, Omari immediately remembers him as the exceptional shooter he met at the shooting range when he just arrived for his tests, and he's excited to see him. Tien asks him if he knows him, so Omari says he doesn't, but he remembers watching him shoot earlier at the shooting range. He explains that he has never seen anyone with such a perfect form in person before, recalling Jaden's exceptional form, focus, and accuracy. Both boys glance at one another, wondering if they're both thinking the same thing. They both ambush Jaden, who is at least a foot taller than them, and ask him if he wants to join their team. Jaden seems surprised to be ambushed by them just minutes after he had just walked in. He looks at them in surprise and asks them if they want him to join them. Omari scratches his head in embarrassment and confesses that they're looking for a third player for the game in the next round. Jaden just looks at him squarely and tells him he saw him in the second round. Omari stands valiantly, with his chest pushed out, recalling how well he did in the last round. Omari suddenly lights up and scratches his head in embarrassment again, while he rhetorically asks Jaden if he saw him. Jaden mentions that his dribbling seems good enough. His words burst Omari's bubble, and his eyes become blank as he hesitantly accepts the compliment. To be sure he heard just right, Omari asks him what he means by good enough, and Jaden doesn't answer. Tien just laughs at Omari's expression. Jaden tells Omari that he only has one question. He asks him why he's teaming up with Tien since he was eliminated in the last round. Tien starts to sweat and tries his best to keep his smile. Jaden continues by saying that the only reason he's still here is because Omari opened an opportunity for him. He continues by asking Omari if he really thinks that someone like Tien, who can't survive on his own and has to rely on others, is a good choice for a teammate in a place like this. He even adds that Tien's height could also pose a problem to them. Tien now has a sour look on his face and loses his smile. Omari butts in and tells Jaden that if there's anything he's learned from the game, it's that Overtime Elite isn't about just individual talent, but it's also about teamwork. He explains that in the second round, Tien saved him when he knocked the ball out of the hands of an opponent he couldn't see. He also recounts how Tien had maintained an extraordinary grip when his opponent had tried to knock the ball out of his hands, only to knock the ball out of the opponent's hands seconds later. Omari confesses that he wouldn't still be in the game without Tien. His words shock Jaden, who just stands there speechless with his mouth open. Our guy also adds that Tien won't be here without him, which is the point of teamwork. He concludes by saying that Jaden would have to take them as a package deal if he wants to play the third round with them. Jaden considers his options and notices that the other members have paired up, and they didn't want to recruit him because he doesn't seem to have performed in a visibly extraordinary way in the last round. He wishes he could get a game that would let his talent shine. If you ask me, this is his thing. Jaden looks at Omari and realizes that he seems to know what he's capable of doing. Omari just stands there side by side with Tien, who just stands there looking like an abandoned child. Dribble appears in the room out of nowhere as usual and tells the boys that their time for picking teams is up. He asks them if they're all ready, and the boys just look at him bewildered. Dribble tells Omari and the other guys that every other person has already registered their teams and asks them what's holding them up. Jaden sighs and eventually agrees to their proposition. He tells himself that it doesn't matter if they hold him back. As long as they can pass the ball to him, they'll win. He tells them he'll join their little team. Omari screams out in excitement, and Tien lets out a sigh of relief. When they get back into the arena, Dribble announces to the people that they've reached the final round of the Overtime Elite tryout. He explains that they've filled the stand with a holographic audience to accompany the executives, scouts, and superfans, just like in a professional game environment. Dribble asks the crowd to make some noise, and the holographic audience goes wild, cheering and clapping. Dribble decides to go over the rules for the third round. Meanwhile, the Overtime Elite executives watch the game closely from their booth. Dribble declares that round 3 will have a team of 3 people play against another team in a 3 versus 3 matchup. He further explains that the normal time you can possess the ball without shooting in basketball is 24 seconds, but in this special game, they've reduced the possession rule to 10 seconds. He adds that this game has a special scoring rule. With a smirk, Dribble announces that there's a special benefit to scoring from behind a 3-point line. The benefit is that whoever scores from behind a 3-point line gets 10 points instead of 3 points. He explains that there will be 3 matches, and 3 teams will stand as winners after these matches. He excitedly announces that teams that win will receive an offer to the Overtime Elite Academy. Dribble continues to hype the crowd, and he asks them if they're ready for this special game of basketball. Down below, Jaden commends the little furball's ability to get a crowd going, with Omari and Tien behind him. The 3 boys step into the court when they learn that their team is one of the first teams to play. Omari, who has been keenly paying attention, explains that this game seems to prioritize those who can shoot. He further explains that with a reduced timer, they'd have to shoot faster than normal. More so, the point allocation for shooter a 3-pointer is over 3 times when you shoot close to the hoop. Jaden starts to stretch and tells him that if they want to win, they'd likely have to focus on shooting 3-pointers. He looks at them and asks them how their shooting skills are. Omari confesses that he's not the best at shooting 3-pointers, and Tien says the same thing. Jaden lets out a sigh and tells them he has figured out that much. He tells them that's no problem and tells them to just pass to him. Omari looks excited to have Jaden on the team, and Tien seems more relieved than excited. Jaden mentions that he hopes the other team can't shoot so well either. Soon enough, the other team of 3 guys who they'll be facing steps out. The other team looks pretty relaxed as they walk towards Omari and his team. Gray looks at the new team more closely and smirks, realizing the game is going to be a tough one. Jaden starkly tells the guys that they aren't very lucky. Omari just smiles when he sees their opponent, but Tien looks a little worried. The team they're up against is Team C, the top-ranked overtime elite tryout team. They're also one of the 3 highest-ranking players in the last round. The guy on a low cut with his hands behind his head is named Ray. Our Jamaican-looking brother with the dreadlocks is named Luke. The last guy who is behind is named Devin. Devin waves at the guys and tells them he hopes they all have a good game. The boys come to the middle of the ring to start the game. Luke confirms Omari's name and tells him that he saw his play in the second round against Oscar and commends that it was really ballsy stuff. The team seems stunned by their opponent's appraisal, but Devin just tells Omari that he respects his gameplay and introduces himself. Omari accepts his handshake and introduces himself. Devin wishes him a good game, and Omari does the same. Omari thinks to himself that Devin is a pretty nice guy. Behind him, Jaden asks Omari if he's done making friends, but Omari tells him that they're just showing sportsmanship. Jaden asks if he wants to become the best and says he assumes that's why he came to Overtime Elite. He adds that this means he'd better be ready to crush Devin's dream if he needs to, and those words get to Omari. Our boy recalls how they crushed Oscar's dream, and he reasons that Jaden is probably right. He tells himself that to survive here at the Overtime Elite, you have to kill someone else's dream to go pro. He realizes that this is probably why everyone here is so cutthroat. Omari tells himself that his strong desire to win doesn't mean he has to end up as heartless as the others. Suddenly, Dribble comes up and excitedly asks the boys if they're ready. Once he announces that the game begins, Devin and Omari simultaneously rush to grab the ball. Devin manages to flip the ball backward to their side, much to Omari's surprise. Our boy is shocked that the opponent got the ball so quickly. He reasons that Devin's jumping power is no joke. Ray grabs the ball and commends Devin on making a stylish tip-off, telling him he knows he gave him the ball on purpose. Ray smiles devilishly and tells Devin he won't let him down. While Omari is still trying to guard Devin, Ray rushes past him, shocking Omari. Omari turns backward to chase him, but Devin corners him too, and the 2 opponents head to hoop. Omari sees Devin and Ray heading right for Jaden, and he realizes that Devin is going to block Jaden to give Ray enough time to make a shot. Devin does just that and blocks Jaden, giving Ray the chance to slip past. Devin uses his hand to hold back Jaden so he can't pursue Ray. Ray sweeps past them and runs into Tien, who is the only one stopping him from the hoop. As he moves closer, he tells Tien to pay attention to what he's about to do. Tien positions himself to guard against the throw, but Ray tells him that what he's about to do is stylish. Ray makes as if he wants to go to his left but quickly turns in the other direction when Tien tries to block it. In a split second, Tien looks back and realizes Ray has passed him, but Ray tells him that he's too slow. Meanwhile, Omari rushes after Ray and tells the other not to worry because he's got him. Omari wonders how Ray was able to get past Jaden and Tien like it was nothing. As he closes in on Ray, who is about to score, he reasons that his speed and reactions are no joke. Suddenly, Ray jumps off to score the hoop and Omari tells himself that he needs to stop him here. As Ray is about to dunk, Omari jumps up to block the ball before it enters. Ray smirks at him, and Omari realizes he's about to change his approach. Instead of shooting the ball in, Ray throws it back at Devin and tells Omari that he can have the spotlight if he wants to. Our boy turns around and sees Devin jumping toward the hoop to make his shot. It's too late for him to respond, and Devin slam dunks the ball into the hoop, telling them to die. After the score, Russell asks Tien what's up with these guys, and Tien wonders why Devin used the term die. When the game continues, Jaden gets the ball, and he tells the other boys to be alert so they can get back at their opponents. As Jaden rushes forward with the ball, he is ambushed by Ray and Luke, and doesn't know what direction to go in. Ray smirks at him and tells him to move forward and do something cool, but Luke tells Jaden that he'll be crushing him here. Jaden smirks and tells them that he loves the attention but would prefer if they screw off. Tien waves at Jaden and signals for him to pass to him. Jaden realizes that Tien is open and quickly turns to pass the ball to him. Before he can throw, he feels a sharp sting in his legs and turns around to see what hit him. It turns out to be Ray, who had poked his leg and slid past him to get the ball. Ray rushes towards the ball and tells Jaden that he's too slow. He quickly passes the ball to Luke, who loudly declares that the ball is his. Luke throws the ball to Devin, who catches it and says the gameplay is perfect. Devin makes his shot from where he is and scores another point. The scoreboard is shown, and Team C has 4 points while Team D has 0 points. Shortly after, Jaden gets possession of the ball again and heads towards the opponent's hoop. On his way, he is ambushed by Ray and Luke again. Jaden hisses, and Omari rushes to help him. He wonders why they're double-teaming Jaden, and wonders if it's because they know he can shoot better than his teammates. Omari suddenly realizes that they're doing it because of the reduced time they can have possession of the ball. Because of the reduced timer, They have to pass the ball between each other, but he realizes that Luke and Ray are hoping they can shut them down by pinning Jaden. As Omari rushes to help him, he wonders if Jaden's ball handling is weak. He tells himself that's not possible. Otherwise, he would have been eliminated in the second round, and he wonders why they're ambushing him. He watches Jaden keep playing, and he notices the way he's moving his feet. Omari suddenly realizes that Jaden's footing is weak. Suddenly, Luke grabs the ball out of Jaden's hands and rushes away with it. Omari realizes something horrific and senses that Jaden is playing with an injury. Meanwhile, Jaden collapses to the ground as Luke grabs the ball out of his hands. In a flashback to last year's East Coast Regional Finals, Jaden scores an amazing shot. The commentator excitedly announces that Jaden has sunk another three-pointer. He announces that the sharpshooter is on fire, and his three-pointers have made scoring 30 points effortless. Jaden celebrates with his teammate Mike, who playfully asks him if it would kill him to stop being so dope for once. Mike tells him that if they keep this up, they'll definitely win the regionals. They're 73-53 on the scoreboard, and Mike tells Jaden that they're leading but can still widen the gap. Jaden asks if they're aiming to win the nationals and tells Mike to just keep passing to him. He says he'll keep scoring and make their dreams come true. Mike smiles and calls Jaden a cocky bastard. He jokes that as the captain, he should discipline him. The captain tells Jaden that he can wait till later and says it's time to win the game. Suddenly, one of the players on the opposing team rushes toward Jaden, and Jaden wonders why he's not slowing down. The guy keeps charging toward him and doesn't slow down to try to dribble him. Moments later, the guy rams right into Jaden and knocks him to the ground. As the guy falls on Jaden, he notices a sly grin on his face, making it clear that he's doing it intentionally. The guy sets his elbow in place over Jaden's leg and smashes into his legs to give him an injury. Later, Jaden is hospitalized after a serious injury and is put in a wheelchair. The doctor tells him and his mother that Jaden's torn Achilles is quite a serious injury. He says that with proper rest and recommended physical therapy, things should be able to return to normal, which is a great relief for Jaden's mother. Jaden quickly asks the doctor about his basketball career. He asks when he can return to his team, and his mother looks at him expressionlessly. The doctor tells Jaden that the damage to the tendon in his leg is quite permanent, and that he might lose his ability to walk if he were to re-injure his leg. As the doctor tells him that his recommendation is to give up basketball, Jaden becomes horrified and begins to sweat profusely. Sometime later, Jaden wheels himself into a park where there's a basketball court. He stops his wheelchair right next to the court and watches the kids play. Suddenly, his phone begins to ring and he picks it up. It turns out to be Mike, so he apologizes, saying he was in surgery and hasn't been able to return his calls. Jaden asks him how the match went and if they won. Mike starkly tells him that they lost and promises that they gave it everything they had. Jaden listens to him over the phone and seems horrified that they lost their chance at winning the nationals. Mike tells him that it looks like they needed him after all. He says that their season is officially over. Mike adds that he'll be graduating this year and called to say it was an honor to play by his side these past few years. Jaden drops the phone from his ear while Mike is still talking, and tears flow from his eyes. While Mike is still talking, Jaden ends the call. He asks himself if this is how things are going to turn out. Because of that fool who gave him an injury, their dreams of playing in the nationals have to die. Jaden starts to tremble as his anger builds. He asks if they hadn't said they were going to win the nationals together. He forces himself to stand on his broken leg and says that it's unfair. He reaches out his hand toward the park basketball hoop, and with tears in his eyes, he tells himself that he doesn't want to give up on basketball. He walks on his broken leg, but his legs falter, and he falls on his back. Back in the present, Jaden remembers that terrible experience, and tears start to roll down his eyes again. He tells himself that he came to the overtime elite for one last chance. He watches Luke run to the hoop to score and wonders if this is really where his dream ends. Luke slams the ball through the hoop and scores another shot. Jaden watches the ball fall to the ground, but Omari walks up to him to help him up. Omari tells him that he must really love basketball to still be playing with an injury like that. Omari smiles at him and says he respects that. Jaden remembers his love for basketball since his childhood until this moment, and Omari asks him if he isn't giving up yet. Jaden takes his hand and says he's not done. He tells Omari that he's already decided to put everything on the line for his dream. He tells Omari to pass the ball to him one more time, and he'll prove it to him. A fire burns in Jaden's eyes, and he says he'll bring their team to the highest level of basketball and to a stage that the world cannot ignore. At this point, the score on the leaderboard is 10 points to 2 points. Omari gets the ball once more and moves toward the opponent's hoop. As he moves, he reasons that because of the decrease in ball possession time to 10 seconds, they have to pass the ball if they want to score quickly. He sees Luke and Ray blocking Jaden and realizes that Jaden is completely shut down because of the duo teaming against him. Devin comes to get the ball from Omari, but Omari notices that Tian is open. Devin quickly blocks his path to Tian and tells him not to be so predictable. Meanwhile, the ball possession timer is at 6 seconds. Omari reasons that Devon's perception is pretty good for him to be able to cut off his passing lane to Tien while waiting for the time to run out. He gets another idea and corners past Devon, deciding to beat him himself. Devon notices his sharp cornering and angrily hisses. The gap creates enough time for Omari to pass to Tien before Devon can come to block the pass. Tien smirks as he grabs the ball and commends Omari on a nice pass. Luke and Ray realize they aren't passing to Jaden, so they rush back when they realize the gameplay has changed. Tien rushes toward the open hoop and tells them this is what happens when you focus your defense on one person. With Luke on his tail, he jumps toward the hoop and scores the shot. The leaderboard gets updated, and Team D gets 4 points against Team C's 10 points. Luke angrily curses when he realizes their opponent has scored on them. Luke calls Devon a Dumbo and says these freaks scored, but Devon tells him to stick to the plan. Luke tells him that Jaden is washed, and they don't need 2 of them to guard the loser. Devon tells him that the way they win is by suppressing their 3-pointers, and he reminds him that they're still ahead. Luke insists that he's more than enough to shut down the one-legged bastard's 3-pointers, and he tells him to let Ray deal with the short kid, referring to Tien. Devon tells him to calm down and reminds him that his plan is still working. Luke angrily asks him what's working about his plan when these scrubs had a clear path to the basket without anyone to block them. Luke adds that it's all because Devon couldn't defend against Omari, and they both lock horns. Ray tells the others to focus because it's not stylish for them to keep arguing. Devon agrees with him and reminds the boys that they're still ahead. Devon grabs the ball and rushes toward the opponents. He tells them that all that matters in the end is that they keep scoring. As he moves forward, Devon comes toe-to-toe with Omari, who is guarding against him. Omari asks him if he's here for round 2, but Devon tells him that he's now getting on his nerves. Devon stops in front of him and bounces the ball around to stop him from grabbing it. In flashback to the time before the game, Luke asks Devon if he's sure that Jaden is the person he's describing. Devon tells them that he's positive and says that he was the bastard that took out his team from the East Coast quarterfinals last year. He tells them that Jaden was a legendary shooter. Luke asks Devon why he didn't team up with Jaden if that's the case. Devon begins to laugh when they ask him that question, and his teammates wonder what's so funny. He tells the guys that he didn't team up with Jaden because someone else put the piece of trash in his place and injured him before he got his chance at revenge. He recalls his loss to Jaden and tells the guys that the bastard ended his team's journey. He recalls Jaden's last shot while he laid on the ground. He tells the guys that this is the reason he wants them to go against him in the next round. Devon tells them of his plan to destroy him and end this properly. Meanwhile, in the present game, Devon crouches and dashes past Omari. As he zooms off with the ball, he laughs inside himself that all Omari is good at is dribbling, and that he can't guard well. He suddenly stops in his tracks when he runs into Tien. Tien guards the path to the hoop and tells him that he's not getting past him. Devon is surprised to see him and wonders what on earth is wrong with him. He notices that Tien is short, but he can't see any opening. Luke calls Devon a Dumbo and asks him why he's stopping. Before Luke can finish his sentence, Omari rushes under him and knocks the ball out of Devon's hands, commending Tien for the great defense. Devon is startled and realizes that Tien was placed there as a distraction. Luke and Ray are shocked at the turn of events, and Omari reminds Jaden that he had said to pass the ball to him. He tells him he's going to do just that. Omari throws the ball to Jaden and tells him this is his chance, and Jaden catches the ball. He quickly jumps up to shoot from where he is, and he's glad to finally get a chance to shoot. He sees that the hoop isn't guarded, and he realizes the shot is open. Luke exclaims and asks why on earth no one is guarding Jaden, and Ray asks if he's just going to stylishly shoot from the court. Luke runs toward him and tells him there's no way he's going to make the shot. Luke tries to mess with him and says the East Coast Regionals are the furthest he'll ever go, and Jaden angrily asks him why he's still talking. As Ray and Luke rush to take the ball from him, he makes his shot from the court, and he thinks about why he returned to basketball even though he had an injury. He tells himself that the reason is simple and watches as the ball flies toward the hoop, much to Luke's dismay. Seconds later, the ball enters the hoop, and they score 10 points. They score 10 points because 3-pointers are 10 points in this game. Jaden tells himself that the reason he came back is because he loves basketball. He smiles as he watches the ball enter the hoop, and his teammates come to celebrate with him. Jaden tells himself that nothing is going to stop him from reaching his dream. Jaden flashes back to the time when the doctor broke the news to him. The doctor apologizes and tells him he wishes he had better news, but confesses that it's best for him to give up on basketball. In the present, he scores far off in the court, and they get 10 points. The virtual crowd, as well as the superfans and executives, rejoice at the sight of the shot. Omari jokingly tells Jaden that it looks like he can pass after all, and Jaden tells him to shut up. He tells Omari that if he wants to win, he should just keep passing to him. Omari smiles at him and calls him an arrogant ball hogger. Omari jokingly asks him if he really thinks he and Tien are going to let him have the spotlight. As the game continues, Luke says it's clear why they had to injure Jaden in the leg, because his range of shots is impressive. Meanwhile, Devin moves the ball and tries to get past Tian. He tells the others that it's all still good. He passes the ball behind him to another person and says all they have to do is score right back. Tian is shocked to see him pass the ball behind his back, and he looks at where the ball went. Devin distracts Tian by moving past him, but he passes the ball behind his back to Luke. Before Tian can respond, Luke passes the ball back to Devin. As Devin rushes towards the hoop, Omari appears in front of him and tries to stop him. Omari tells him sorry but says he has to stop him here. As Ray rushes past them to station himself close to the hoop, Devin retorts that he's the one who's supposed to be apologizing. He tells Omari that it's too bad he's on Jaden's team because he's collateral damage. Devin faces another direction to distract Omari, and he passes the ball to Ray. Jaden tries to block Ray, but Ray throws the ball toward the hoop. The ball hits the ring and bounces off. Ray frowns and tells himself that his throw wasn't so stylish. He checks the timer and sees he had 4 seconds left to possess the ball, and he says that shooting a three-pointer under these conditions is crazy. Omari commends Jaden for the nice pressure he applied, and he tries to tell him to rebound. Little does he know that Devin is right behind him, running towards the hoop to slam the ball in. As Devin prepares to jump, he tells himself that he's sacrificed too much to get to these tryouts. He jumps towards the ball and tells himself that he's lost it all once before. He grabs the ball and prepares to smash it in, and he tells himself there's no choice but to win here. Tien watches in horror as Devin smashes the ball into the hoop and scores 2 extra points for his team. Devin kicks Tien in the back as he jumps back down. When he lands, Ray and Luke come to celebrate with him. Luke tells Devin that his gameplay isn't bad, and Ray thanks him for the save. Tien, who is still on the ground, hisses due to the pain. Suddenly, Omari reaches out his hand to help Tien up, and he asks him if he's good. Tien smiles and tells him he's fine. Omari grabs his hand and pulls him up and tells him that they're just getting started. The game continues, and the boys advance towards their opponent with Tien possessing the ball. Omari passes Devin, and Tien passes him the ball. Devin turns around to face him and tells him that he sure smiles a lot during the game. Devin tells him that a newbie like him must be happy being on the court. He mentions that he's newer to playing with a team, but Omari just looks at him. Devin guesses that this must be his first real game. Omari tells him that he's from New York and asks him if he really thinks he's going to get into his head. Omari passes the ball to his side and runs to get it as he wishes Devin good luck. Devin quickly turns around and he dashes close to Omari. He tells our boy that all this running around is finally catching up to him, and Omari is shocked to see him move so quickly. In a split second, Devin grabs the ball out of his hands. After he grabs the ball, he turns back and tells him he's lucky that he gets a second chance as he passes to Ray. Ray collects the ball with a smirk, and Devin tells Omari that it doesn't matter if he has Jaden on his team since the rest of them can't keep up. Ray smirks, and he attempts a three-pointer from the court. The ball enters the hoop, and Devin tells him that he's already lost his dream once, and he won't let losers like them take it away again. Omari is shocked that he could take the ball from him, and Devin tells them to give it everything they've got. He tells them not to hold back. He turns back to Jaden and tells him that he needs to crush them at their best. The leaderboard updates Team C's score to 22 points, while Team D is on 14 points. In a flashback to years ago while Omari was playing in their neighborhood basketball court, he practices on his own and does his own commentary. He imagines himself in a large stadium and imagines himself as a rookie sensation with the ball amidst several opponents. The commentator asks how he will carve his path forward while there are several giant opponents in front of him. Omari smiles sheepishly before he plays his shot, but his daydreaming abruptly comes to an end when he hears someone shout his name. Omari returns to reality and sees his aunt by the court, asking him to help her with the groceries. She tells him that she still has some work to do and asks him if he minds giving her a hand with dinner. He hesitates, and she asks him if he's listening to her at all. Omari looks dejected as he walks toward her while still looking back at his basketball. Suddenly, he hears a loud crash, and he looks back at his aunt. His aunt crashes to the ground, and Omari rushes to help her. Later on, his aunt is hospitalized after she fainted, and Omari stands beside her. He tells her that she's always pushing herself too far. Finally, he sits down in a nearby chair and tells himself that he needs to start pulling his weight too. In the present, Omari tells himself that sometimes a dream is just a dream. Devin manages to score another shot, and Team C gets 26 points, while Team D still has 14 points. Some of the scouts chat that it seems the game is picking up, and Gray agrees. Gray starts to become tense and asks if everyone will be able to match the pace. Meanwhile, Omari gets the ball again and dribbles past Ray. Ray looks back at him and wonders how he's able to still move like that. As Omari moves closer to the hoop, Luke appears in front of him and tells him he'll stop him here. Omari quickly responds and passes the ball to Tien, who is open. Tien makes a throw, and it enters the hoop. The leaderboard updates and gives Team D 16 points, causing Tien to celebrate. As they celebrate, Omari tells himself that he hates to admit it, but Devin was right. He admits that he isn't used to a fast-paced game like this. Meanwhile, Luke scores and gets his team 28 points. Omari thinks about how they're constantly fighting to score, as Jaden scores a 2-pointer. He also considers how they're constantly struggling to defend. Meanwhile, Luke scores another point and gets his team up to 30 points. He wonders how he's supposed to keep up in this chaotic game. As he moves towards the opponent's hoop, Devin blocks him again and scorns that he's finally reached his limit. Devin tells him that someone as pathetic as him deserves to have it all end here. Once more, Devin grabs the ball out of Omari's hand, much to his horror. Devin smirks as he makes his way to the hoop to score once more. Omari looks back in shock. Jaden curses and tells Tien to get back to block Devin. Omari watches Devin go for the hoop, and he tells himself that his dream of going pro is over if they score one more 3-pointer. He thinks about how he's pushed himself so much today, and considers how he can barely move. He tells himself that he may have been wrong to chase this crazy dream. He tells himself that coming to the overtime elite was all a mistake. Omari tells himself his life would be a lot simpler if he just let go of this dream already. He lays on the ground and imagines himself falling into a graveyard with his dream. Suddenly, Tien yanks his jersey and asks him what on earth he's doing by just standing there. Tien shouts at him and tells him he's not allowed to die yet. Tien rushes past him and manages to knock the ball out of Devin's hands. Devin looks back at him and wonders how this kid is still playing at 100%. Tien quickly passes the ball to Omari. Omari grabs the ball, and he doesn't seem to know what to do next. Tien calls out to him, so he looks up at him. Tien runs towards him with Devin on his tail. Tien asks him if he can still run and reminds him that it's not just his dream that's on the line. Tien tells him to get his behind up because they're not done yet. Omari is challenged by those words, and he turns around to make his way to the hoop. Ray is shocked to see that Omari is still going, and Luke notices that he's got a wide-open chance to score a 2-pointer. Devin is shocked when Omari stops running, and he also stops. He tells them not to tell him that Omari plans to shoot from where he is. Omari stands on the court and jumps up to shoot a 3-pointer. Omari reasons that Tien is right. As he shoots the ball, he tells himself he can't believe he was so selfish. He recalls that he's so used to playing by himself that he almost thought this was just about his dream. He tells himself that this is about the entire team. Omari tells himself that he doesn't care if his body breaks here because he needs to push himself beyond for the sake of everyone. The ball flies into the air and enters right into the hoop. The leaderboard updates and gives Team D 28 points, and Omari rejoices that they're back from the dead.